All right, folks, last time we were talking about the impeachment of President Johnson. So Johnson was impeached because he violated the Tenure of Office Act. If you remember, it said that Johnson was not allowed to do what?
He was not allowed to
remove people from office without congressional approval of some degree or another. Did he do it anyway?
Yeah.
He did. So Johnson is impeached. What does it mean to be impeached? Yeah, to be investigated. And if during that impeachment proceeding, there is enough evidence during your impeachment to find you maybe guilty, then there's what? A trial. And if they find you guilty at the trial, then what happens? Then you're removed as president. But just because you're impeached, does that mean you're removed from office? No. Again, most people mistaken that. Like, oh, he got impeached, so he was kicked out of office. No. If you get impeached, that means they're going to investigate if there's grounds to remove you from office. Cool there?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Johnson gets impeached. Does he get removed? No, he does not. He misses removal by only 7 votes. So it was close. But he doesn't get impeached, mostly because we argue that it's probably not a good idea to remove presidents just because you don't like them. Because did he really do anything like severely unconstitutional? No, Congress and the president just weren't getting along. Is that a good reason to impeach a president? No, because might we do it to you next time? Yeah, so not ideal. Yes, sir. There were several attempts, but remember, Jackson was a very popular president that controlled Congress, so they wouldn't have gotten the votes anyway. So the question was whether or not anyone ever tried to impeach Jackson. There were attempts, because a lot of people did not like Jackson, but they would have never gotten the votes, because Jackson was very popular in Congress, at least his party was. So let's talk about Southern Reconstruction. Southern Reconstruction. So let me make clear, folks, up until this point, up until this slide, who's been guiding Reconstruction? The North or Congress or the radical Republicans, right? So up until this point, the Reconstruction that we've been talking about so far has been guided by the North. What we're talking about here is what is happening in the South that's being led by the South. Does that make sense? So up until this point, you've had Northerners telling the South what to do. But at the same time, you also have Southerners trying to reconstruct the South as well. Make sense? Just understand, you have Northern Reconstruction, and while that's happening, you also have Southern Reconstruction that's supporting the North's plans. Cool? Let me explain the 3 groups you need to know that participated in Southern Reconstruction. The first group are the Scalawags. The Scalawags were poor white Southerners These were poor white Southerners who supported Reconstruction. So the Scalawags were poor white Southerners that supported Reconstruction. Now, before Reconstruction, how were poor white Southerners doing? Were they politically powerful?
No.
Did they have a lot of economic opportunities? No. But now that the South is rebuilding, do they have an opportunity to have influence? They do. And so the Scalawags join Northern Reconstruction. They help support Northern Reconstruction for political and economic opportunities. They join or support Northern Reconstruction for political and economic opportunities. I mean, think about it, folks. If you're a poor white Southerner, how might you benefit economically? What would you want to do if you were helping Southern Reconstruction? How would you try to get a job? What might you promote for the South? Industrialization. So these Scalawags promoted industrialization, because how would they benefit from that? More jobs. A lot more jobs. So these Scalawags promoted industrialization for job opportunities. And also politically, they supported Reconstruction because what might they be able to do? Might they earn political office? There was a hope that they might gain political office. They might become mayors or congressmen or whatever else. And so these poor white Southerners said, hey, North, we'll help you with Reconstruction. Why don't you create industrialization here so that my fellow common man can have jobs? And why don't you also promote, me, running the mayor's office, because I'm sure I can help promote your Reconstruction ideas. So again, scalawags, they promoted Reconstruction because do they have a lot to benefit from Reconstruction? They can get jobs, they can get political office, they can have a lot of influence. Be aware, scalawags supported Reconstruction. Good so far there. The other group that supported Reconstruction were carpetbaggers. Carpetbaggers were Northerners who moved to the South to support Reconstruction. Carpetbaggers were Northerners who moved to the South to support Reconstruction. Now, why do you think they called them carpetbaggers? They carried around carpet bags, but why carpet bags? Not to steal stuff. Back then, folks, most houses, if you think of like houses back in the 1860s, do houses have carpet? So if you had carpet, is that kind of a big deal to have in your house? Yeah. So if you're going to move, are you going to bring your carpet with you? Oh yeah, you're not going to leave your carpet at the house. That's pricey. If I'm moving to a new house, I'm bringing my carpet with me. So where would you put that carpet if you were going to move? In a carpet bag. So do you think your carpet bag was probably the biggest bag you had in your house? Sure. So when these Northerners decided to move south, they left their carpets at home and they shoved everything they could in the biggest bag that they had, and that bag just happened to be their carpet bag. They're called carpetbaggers because they found the biggest bag that they had, which is the bag that held their carpet. They'd shove all their clothes, belongings in that bag, and they would move to the south to support Reconstruction. Now, two groups moved to the south from the north. The first group were profiteers. Why do you think profiteers moved to the south?
To profit.
To profit how? How might they benefit economically? Yeah. They thought they could create new businesses. They thought they could create factories. They thought they could rebuild. And doing any of these profiteers hoped to what? They hoped to make a lot of money. In fact, folks, could you argue that these people are kind of taking advantage of the South? Yeah. They're taking advantage of chaos and destruction, saying, sweet, here's a great place for me to make money. Someone's going to have to rebuild those roads. Someone's going to have to build new factories. Someone's going to have to create new businesses. So why not that be me? Why can't I be that guy? And so many Northerners, moved to the South for profit. Not out of the kindness of their heart, but because they want to make money. Okay, so that's the first kind of person. The second kind of person came why? Out of the kindness of their heart. They came to actually help the South. So many of them came as teachers. Many of them genuinely came to volunteer. Many of them came to help who? They're not slaves anymore. Blacks or the freedmen. They genuinely came to help the South or the freedmen. So two groups. One that came for profit, to benefit themselves. Others came genuinely to help. So it kind of just depended on who you talk to. By the way, folks, the term scalawag is kind of like a pirate term, like, you dirty, rotten scalawag. Who do you think called the poor white Southerners scalawags? The upper wealthy Southerners, right? The former plantation owners said, you traitors! You're betraying the Southern cause by helping the North, you scalawags. Make sense? Okay. The third group. that's going to participate in Southern Reconstruction is who? Who has the most to benefit from participating in Southern Reconstruction? The freedmen. So you also see the rise of black Reconstruction. Freedmen or blacks will also participate in black Reconstruction. Many of these individuals became mayors and politicians. In fact, folks, not only were they elected to local political office, because some of them became mayors and politicians, others were elected to what? Congress. Blanche K. Bruce and Hiram Revels, what do you think they were? The first what? Congressman and senator. Blanche K. Bruce was the first congressman, first black congressman. And Hiram Revels is the first black senator. Which means, in which house did Hiram Revels serve in? In which house in Congress did Hiram Revels serve in? The Senate. And which house did Blanche K. Bruce serve in? House of Representatives. So we call them both houses, even though one is called the House of Representatives and the other is called the Senate. It doesn't have a house in its name. But one of the houses is the Senate, the other house is the House of Representatives. But is it kind of a big deal that black men are now being elected to national office? Yes. Before the Civil War, would anyone even imagine that black men would be serving with whites in Congress in Washington, D.C.? Not even a dream for most. But now, you have over 14 congressmen and 2 senators now serving in Congress. That's a big deal. Is that a huge change, folks? Is that a major success? I would say so. They're doing pretty well for themselves. So again, folks, you have 14 congressmen and 2 senators now serving in Congress. Huh? 14 black congressmen, or 14 black freedmen, 2 freedmen for the Senate. So again, lots of progress, folks? I would say so. The problem with this, though, is that unfortunately, Southern Reconstruction, it was good. There were benefits to Southern Reconstruction. One, folks, now that blacks and poor Southern whites are voting, what's good about Southern Reconstruction? What did it do? Huh? Yeah, it made the South more democratic. So that's good. That's a plus. The South is more democratic because who can vote now? Or who has political influence? Freedmen and poor whites. Now they have a lot more political influence. That's a plus. Also, you have industrialization. Why is that good? More jobs. And is their economy going to become stronger? Definitely. They have more diversity in their economy. So industrialization is good. And they also improved education. All good things. The problem, though, is that while some of these are good, and this is not the worst thing in the world, but what you do see in the South at this time is that the Southern governments, led by blacks and the poor whites, unfortunately, those governments were very ineffective. Those governments were very ineffective in the South for the most part. Yeah, you had some industrialization. Yeah, you saw improvements in education. But unfortunately, many of these improvements were ineffective because did blacks serve in Congress or government before this? Did poor whites really serve in government? No, so it's not really their fault. They're just what? They're inexperienced. And so, but that is unfortunately working against them. Many of them were inexperienced. So that's not going to be the best thing in the world. They're ineffective. They're inexperienced. Unfortunately, some of these men entering office were corrupt. Because were they easily taken advantage of? I mean, they're new. They don't know what to do. Like, oh, wait, I can make money on the side? Oh, great, I'll do that. Yeah, give me an extra $1,000. I'll give you the contract. And many of them overspent. Many Southerners felt like their money was being wasted. Many of them felt like their money was being wasted, so you have a lot of overspending. So again, the best government in the world? No. Definitely ineffective, but is there some progress? Like, you know what? Babies can't walk very well, but the fact that they're walking at all is that improvement. I'm not going to run a marathon, but it's still progress. He's walking even a few steps at a time. And that's really what this is. Not the greatest in the world, but progress. And I think we have to note that. But again, without any previous experience, he did a pretty good job. Not the best job in the world, but a pretty good job. Well, in 1868, folks, you have another election. This is just a placeholder election for now. But in the election of 1868, you have to write down the people who ran. But in the election of 1868, who wins? Grant wins. So in the election of 1868, Ulysses S. Grant wins the election. He's a Republican. And by the way, folks, what do you notice about this map? A lot of the territories have already been established, and these will eventually become what? States. So are the shapes already taking form? Yes. Definitely. What else do you notice about this map? What else hasn't happened yet for some? Yes, some states have not been reconstructed yet. Texas, Mississippi, and Virginia, they still haven't done enough to be reconstructed. They either haven't taken that oath yet, or they refused to ratify the 13th and 14th Amendments. And so again, by 1868, some states still have not been reconstructed, but have most returned to the Union. Yeah. That's pretty good, but not all. So we'll get to that. So again, Grant wins. He becomes the 18th President of the United States. Ulysses S. Grant, serving from 1868 to 1876. How many terms? 2 terms. Like I told you before, one of the most corrupt presidents in our history. Whether it's his fault or not is up to history to decide. Either he was corrupt or he was just so stupid that he appointed the wrong people that just did corrupt things around him. Either case, he's still culpable for their actions, or responsible for their actions. And so we'll talk about him in the next unit. For now, he's just a placeholder. But Ulysses S. Grant. During his tenure, first passing the Civil Rights Act of 1875, the goal is to prevent segregation. Because what are some southern states now doing? Segregating. What does that mean to segregate? Like segregating or separating blacks and whites. Saying, hey, this train station waiting area is just for blacks or whites. The black train waiting station is over there about a mile away. Or like, oh, this is a whites-only restroom. The blacks-only restroom is over there by the tree. Okay, this is not where blacks get to go. So you see segregation happening in the South, and is the North okay with that? No. So they passed the Civil Rights Act to prevent Southern segregation. Good so far? Okay. Well, folks, despite many efforts, you slowly see the end of Reconstruction happening. Despite all the efforts made, Reconstruction will now come to an end slowly but surely over the next few years. First off, Confederate pardons. Despite efforts not to do so, over 75% of Confederate leaders were pardoned. Which means what? They were forgiven. And why is that going to be a problem if 75% of Confederate leaders were pardoned? What are they probably going to do? Not do it again necessarily. They're not going to secede again. But where are they probably going to go? Many of them will probably return to office. Many of them might rejoin the military. And folks, is that a major change that we were looking for? Might they just breed the same types of ideas over and over and over again? The sense of racism and secession and nullification? None of that is good. But we pardoned them because we felt bad, I guess. But that's not good. That's not making a massive change in the South, but it happened. Both Lincoln, Johnson, they pardoned all these people. Then the Panic of 1873. Hey, what was the last one? 57, about 20 years prior to it? Just about? Interesting. About 16 years prior? Almost 20 years? The Panic of 1873, folks, what do you think this was caused by? Over-speculation. You guys are so smart. But in Southern Reconstruction. Many people are spending money on the South right now. And did everyone hope to make money?
Yeah.
Sure. Did everyone make money?
No.
So that's the problem. Okay, everyone hoped to make money rebuilding the South, but not everyone did, so some people failed. But because of the Panic of 1873, folks, the North became disinterested in the South. The North became disinterested in the South. Because is the North dealing with their own problems now? They're dealing with the panic. Do I have to spend billions of dollars trying to help the South? I mean, South, help yourself. I'm dealing with my own problems. I'm supposed to still go down to the South and make sure your economy is thriving? It's been 8 years. Why can't you fix your own economy? And so the North becomes a bit frustrated with the South. They're wondering why blacks can't just help themselves. I mean, it's been 8 years. I don't see what else you need from us. We've freed you. We've given you rights. We've given you the right to vote. You figure it out. But the North becomes disinterested because they're dealing with their own panic. And then the South begins a counter-revolution. When the South recognizes, wait, I think the North doesn't care as much. I think the North is not paying as much attention to the South anymore. Does the South see this as an opportunity to reclaim the South?
Yes.
They see this as an opportunity to redeem the South. What does that mean, to redeem the South? To take back. They see this as an opportunity to redeem the South, or to take back the South for the South. So many Southerners here, they begin to conspire to figure out a way to take it back from the black man. And of course, in a much more gruesome political cartoon right next to it, you see this white man standing over a black child captioned in self-defense, and he says, this chivalrous gentleman, if I hadn't killed you, you would have grown up to rule me. So I had to kill you, because if you didn't, you would have ruled me and taken away my rights, my way of life. And so the assumption now is that it's okay to commit these kinds of heinous crimes because I'm not doing it to enjoy it. I'm doing it because I'm protecting my way of life. So if I had to kill the child, then so be it. I'm trying to protect my family. I'm trying to protect my way of life. And so, did they kill children left and right? No. But were they okay with killing some children if it was just part of the war they were fighting? Yes. And so you have the horrors of this mini civil war going on in the South. But many steps are taken to promote this counter-revolution in the South by whites. The first is the Jim Crow laws. And because the North stops caring about what's happening in the South begin to pass Jim Crow laws. And Jim Crow laws promoted segregation. They promoted segregation. So again, you have the whites-only laundromats and blacks-only theaters and blacks-only schools and whites-only schools. And they had a black entrance and a white entrance to restaurants and whatever else. So you see the beginning of segregation in the South. Because what was the argument for segregation? Why did whites want segregation?
They're not able.
What do you mean not able? Yeah, black people are less than whites. Like, we don't want to be intermixing with them. We're not the same. We are different. So why are we going to be entering the same restaurants, eating the same food when we're not the same? We shouldn't be mingling. Let them have theirs, let us have ours, but I want nothing to do with them. So you see the emergence of Jim Crow laws in the South trying to separate the two cultures. And in fact, you see this kind of spread along in the South where you have different types of segregation. The sign up there, of course, equates Mexicans and blacks with who? Assuming that they're all the same. You have black and white restrooms, black and white water fountains. You even have this notion that, if you're going to find a job, I'm sorry, this business only hires whites because we're a white-only company. So are there going to be some serious ramifications for blacks? They might be denied jobs. They might be denied access to libraries or opportunities or public offices. So this is actually a serious problem. So many people sue. And in the Supreme Court case of Plessy v. Ferguson, the Supreme Court rules in 1896 that segregation is constitutional. In 1896, the Supreme Court rules that, actually segregation is okay, provided that facilities, they're allowed to be separate, but they must be what? Equal. So the phrase separate but equal becomes very important in American history. You definitely need to know Plessy v. Ferguson. Because in the Supreme Court case of Plessy v. Ferguson, it said, it's okay to segregate blacks and whites, provided that when you separate them, the facilities are equal. So you can have a black and white school provided that what? They're equal schools, they have the same kinds of resources, same types of education. So that's what it said legally. In practice, were things actually equal? No. Were black schools and white schools the same? No. Were black schools going to get the same amount of books? No. Were they going to get the same amount of money? No. Black restrooms and white restrooms, would they be cleaned equally? No. And so really what it came down to was the law said separate but equal. But legally, was anyone in the South going to enforce it? No. So even if it wasn't legal, who is going to come down and check on you to say, hey, are these schools equal? Again, does the North care as much anymore? No, they're a bit disinterested. They're not going to focus on the South anymore. By the way, folks, separate but equal lasts until 1954. It lasts until 1954. 58 years. Separate but equal is the law of the land. So 1954. So your grandparents, maybe some of your parents were alive at this time, but the basic notion, maybe your parents were like babies at the time. But still, separate but equal. Black nurseries, white nurseries. Colored nurseries, white nurseries. So it's one of those things where many of your, especially your grandparents, they were here in America at the time. Separate but equal was alive and well. Then you have the rise of the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. So the KKK, or the Ku Klux Klan, rises at this time. And again, their goal is, again, to redeem the South, but really to stop blacks from voting. And they want to end Reconstruction. So they want to stop blacks from voting, and they want to end Reconstruction. So how might they stop blacks from voting? With what?
They might threaten.
Yeah, they would use violence and intimidation. So the KKK, or the Ku Klux Klan, would use violence and intimidation to stop blacks from voting. Ku Klux, by the way, is a Greek word, which means like secret society or secret meaning, which is where the term comes from, Ku Klux. And the goal was to stop them from voting, because really the idea is that if they don't vote, well, the blacks lose power. Yeah. That's the hope. Here's a letter written about the Ku Klux Klan. I must tell you something about the Ku Klux. They are raging on the other side of the river. They have whipped several white men, whipped and killed several Negroes. Why are they whipping white men? They might be supporting Negroes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. They whipped Colonel Higgins, the superintendent of free schools, nearly to death, and everybody rejoiced when they heard it, for everybody hated him. He squandered the public money buying piano forts, organs, sofas, and furniture for the Negro schoolhouse in Aberdeen. The people are taxed beyond endurance. The Ku Klux gave him 70 lashes and then gave him 10 days to leave the country. He left and went to Jackson. So, by the way, the Ku Klux, they believe they're standing up for who? Yeah, for the common man, right? Like, we're standing up for the people. Okay, because they are overtaxing us, and someone has to represent our needs, because they are taxing us way too much to give money to the black man. So we as the KKK are standing up for you. There was a regiment of militia came into Aberdeen Friday. They are sent here to put down the Ku Klux. Huggins has come back with the militia, but I wouldn't give a straw for his life, for he will be killed. It is the opinion of most everybody there will be war. The Yankees coming here will make the Negroes more insolent. And it goes on from there. But anyway, folks, the KKK emerge. Here they are burning crosses as signs of intimidation. They're good Christian men, by the way.
Why do you burn crosses?
Many of them believe that they're good Christians. As a warning, they would burn a cross saying, the fire of God condemns you, and, if you don't leave, then the fire of hell will burn you. And so they would burn crosses on their yards as a symbol of intimidation. Why did they dress up the way they did? Anyone know?
They were the ghosts of Confederate soldiers.
They were the ghosts of Confederate soldiers to intimidate and to scare. But also, why were they hiding their faces?
Oh, because you could get arrested.
Yeah, is what they're doing illegal?
Yeah.
And why didn't you just call the police? Because the police, the mayors, congressmen, they were members of the KKK. So you couldn't really tell anyone, like, oh, hey, the KKK's coming. The sheriff's like, is that so? No. I'll make sure to look into it. But he was actually part of the KKK, the lynch mob. And so the KKK spread throughout the South. And so the North responds with the force acts. How does the North try to prevent the KKK from terrorizing the South? Who do they send? The military. Very good. So the North sends the military to the South to stop the KKK from terrorizing blacks. So in the force acts of 1870 and 1871, the North sends the military to the South to stop the KKK from terrorizing blacks. So here's an example of the military standing up for the freedmen. Here's another picture of a military northerner standing up for the freedmen. But folks, unfortunately, many, despite the military being in the South, did they have a hard time finding out who was in the KKK?
Yeah.
Why?
Because
they were disguised. It was a secret society. And so unfortunately, the KKK was very successful at lynching or lynch mobs. What are lynch mobs?
you're going to hang people.
Yeah, when they would chase blacks down, they would hang them. Okay. In fact, if you look at this map here, each of those brown states hung 200 or more people each in the time period, which is quite a bit. In total, from 1890 to 1920, a 30-year period, over 645 whites were hung, and almost 2,500 blacks were hung. 2,500 in a 30-year period. And so the lynch mobs, were they somewhat successful in doing their job? And what was their job? Why were they doing the lynching? To stop blacks from voting. And ultimately, folks, what you start seeing then is that in this map, you see that blacks become disenfranchised, and that was a success for the Southern whites. But because of the KKK's actions, you see the disenfranchisement of blacks. What does it mean to disenfranchise someone? If you disenfranchise someone, not to scare, but if you disenfranchise someone, I'm intimidating you so much that you've become disenfranchised. To disenfranchise someone means to take away what? to take away the right to vote. If I disenfranchise you, that means I'm taking away your right to vote. Because what happened, folks, is that if the KKK is in your town and you know they're violently hanging people from trying to vote, are you going to vote? No. So just by simple fear and violence and intimidation, the KKK disenfranchised so many blacks that they didn't vote. And if they don't vote, are blacks going to enter power anymore? Who's going to enter office again? The whites. And are the whites going to continue to take away black rights to vote? Yes. They'll say, hey, if you want to vote, you have to own property. Could some blacks own property? No. Hey, if you want to vote, you have to learn how to read. Could all blacks read yet? No. And so they begin to disenfranchise blacks from voting. And so they do that through fear and intimidation. And the KKK does that pretty successfully. This brings us to the election of 1876. In the election of 1876, the Republicans, they nominate Rutherford B. Hayes, whereas the Democrats, they nominate Samuel Tilden. So in the election of 1876, the Republicans nominate Rutherford B. Hayes, while the Democrats nominate Samuel Tilden. The election, folks, ends up being, for all intents and purposes, an electoral tie. Neither president wins a majority because 50% goes to Hayes, 50% goes to Tilden, which means who decides? Congress, or the House of Representatives. So now the House of Representatives must decide who will become the next president of the United States. So in that election, they decide, all right, let's figure this out. They create what is known as the Hayes-Tilden Compromise. The Hayes-Tilden Compromise. So here's what happens in the Hayes-Tilden Compromise. In the Hayes-Tilden Compromise, also known as the Hayes-Tilden Sellout, as most Northerners call it, depends on who you talk to, or the Compromise of 1877, also just known as just that, Compromise of 1877. What happened in this election is that they agreed that Hayes would get to be president. If, that's a big if, they said, fine, we will let Hayes be president of the United States. We will shift the votes around, and we will let Hayes be president of the United States if the North ends Reconstruction. And specifically what they want is for the North to remove the military from the South. They say, we will let Hayes be president if that's what you guys want. You Republicans want Hayes to be president, fine. The Democrats will vote for Hayes to be president if the North agrees to end Reconstruction and remove the military from the South. And how would the South benefit if the North removes the military from the South? Yeah. Yeah. Could the KKK rise up?
Yeah.
Could they take away power from the blacks?
Yeah.
Could they redeem the South, if you will?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, the North and Hayes agree. And in 1876, Rutherford B. Hayes becomes the 19th President of the United States, serving from 76 to 80. And because of the election of 1876 and the Compromise of 1877, you have Southern redemption and the end of Reconstruction. And when I say Southern redemption, I mean what?
They reclaimed the South.
The South was reclaimed by the South. And if you look, folks, the numbers is that all these southern states will eventually be reclaimed by the South. So here's my question then. Reconstruction ended with the Compromise of 1877. So Reconstruction ends with the Compromise of 1877. The important question you have to be able to answer then is this. Was Reconstruction a success or a failure? So, write this down in your notes. Let's answer it, and then we'll be done with Unit 5. So, write this question down, build yourself a chart, and we have to answer this question as a class. Was Reconstruction a success or a failure? And remember, folks, think the short and long term. Yeah, a lot of things sucked, but there were also some gains, some progress. So if you go back to the beginning of the Reconstruction section, we posed 3 goals of Reconstruction. The question is, did we meet those goals? All right, so folks, let's begin. Let's talk about the successes of Reconstruction. What happened during Reconstruction that we can consider successful? Yeah, so we freed the slaves. How did we do that? So let's talk about the Reconstruction Amendments real quick, because are those successes? What did the Reconstruction Amendments do? So 13th is
It
freed slaves. What did the 14th Amendment do? Civil rights. What did the 15th Amendment do? The right to vote. What other successes existed? How else did we help blacks, for example? Education, definitely. How did we educate them? Through what organization did we educate blacks? Freedmen's Bureau, definitely another major success. Did blacks benefit other ways? You know, after we freed them, gave them civil rights and the right to vote, how might some blacks have benefited? Yes, some blacks became congressmen. So like Blanche K. Bruce. And who's the other guy? Hiram Revels. Probably should mention those, because is that a big deal that blacks are now in office? Sure. Other successes of the North, of Reconstruction. We talked about freeing the blacks. What else was a goal of Reconstruction? Huh? Yeah, did we restore the Union? Yeah, we restored the Union. That's a big plus. Yay! The Union is restored. Is it exactly the way we wanted it to be?
No.
No, but are we at least one country again?
Yeah.
Definitely. What else is a positive? We industrialize the South. Good. You have Southern industrialization. So is that going to be good for the Southern economy? A lot more jobs. Good. A lot more diversity in the economy. What else is good for the South? Think politically. It's a more democratic system. Why is the system more democratic in the South, at least for a time being?
Because blacks still be in office.
Blacks and poor whites. So were there a lot of successes in the South? I would say so. Now, unfortunately, these successes were short-lived, right? Because there are failures, but can we deny that these successes happened?
No.
They're important successes because will they let us then have the civil rights movement in the 1960s? This had to have happened first. before the 1960s Martin Luther King stuff happened. Let's talk about failures. What did not go well? So the Panic of 1873 definitely did not help. What else is considered a failure at this time? Black codes, yeah, that sucked. What else is considered bad for blacks and a failure at this time? So, those segregation rights, what is that known as? What laws were they? Jim Crow laws. What Supreme Court case goes along with Jim Crow? Plessy v. Ferguson. What other stuff is bad for the blacks at this time? Huh? KKK, yeah, the KKK is not good. Huh? Yeah, the KKK, disenfranchisement of blacks. What else? What else? Yeah, Compromise of 1877. The Compromise of 1877 is significant. Why? You have to know this, folks. What did it do? It ended Reconstruction. Any others? Come on, folks. Huh? Yeah. Ineffective Southern governments. Good. Think economically, folks. What are other economic problems? Huh? Overspeculation is true for the Panic of 1873. Sharecropping. And if you look at the black codes, Jim Crow, sharecropping, what do you see happening in the South? The rise of what? Virtual slavery. Debt slavery, virtual slavery, however you want to look at it. And so, folks, if you look at this, what's another problem with regard to, Confederate leaders? Yeah. Confederate leaders were pardoned, which means you see very little change there. So, folks, are there a lot of failures to Reconstruction as well? In the short term, are these failures really bad? But in the long term, are these successes really good? So you have to see it in both lenses. In the short term, yeah, you know what? Things looked really bad. But in the long term, did this set the stage for the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and all those folks? Yes. So slowly, the Reconstruction unit will have an impact on Unit 10. Everyone good there? Everyone clear on this question? If Reconstruction was a success or failure, what is the answer? Was Reconstruction a success or a failure? The answer is both. Can you say it's more than one or the other? Yeah, you can. It's your choice. You get to argue. But really, the better answer is what? It's more of a in the long term. In the long term, it's more of a success because do the failures last forever? No. But do the long-term effects of the successes last forever? Yes. Okay, folks, that's Unit 6, or Unit 5. On Wednesday, we will start Unit 6, and I will give you guys your Unit 5 test.